Today we're going to be talking about anger, what it is, and why it happens. Hi everyone. Anger is often thought of as a negative emotion, and people often perceive it as something that's bad or something that needs to be suppressed. However, anger is a very important emotion and serves some key purposes. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the role of anger and why it happens. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those things out of the way, let's start talking about anger. Now, at its core, anger is an emotion that's designed to alert you to the fact that something's wrong. Anger may show you that something or someone has interfered with your goals or is trying to harm you or someone that you care about. The purpose of anger is to activate you in a way to take steps to address that person or the situation that's potentially causing you harm. It can motivate you to solve problems. It can motivate you to stand up for yourself or to make positive changes that you need to make in your life. Now, when viewed this way, anger doesn't really have the same negative connotation that we often think about. That's because the way we think about anger has been largely influenced by external factors, things like religion, gender, culture, perceiving anger as sinful, a form of toxic masculinity, that anger means that a person is out of control. But the key point is that anger in and of itself is not bad, and that there's nothing wrong with expressing anger. The problem comes in the way anger gets expressed, often in the form of violence or aggression, both verbal or physical. Now, there are a number of ways in which anger can become problematic. Anger can become problematic if it occurs too frequently. If you're constantly dealing with high levels of anger on a daily basis, that's likely to reduce the quality of your life, even if the anger is justified or warranted. You just get worn down by constantly feeling angry. It can also become problematic if it lasts too long. Remember, the purpose of anger is to activate you to take steps to try and address a situation. It's not meant to be an ongoing emotional state, as it can be draining both psychologically and physically for a person. Occasionally, anger can be experienced as overly intense, disproportionate to what's actually happening in the situation. And when this happens, a person's much more likely to act impulsively or say something that they may regret later. These forms of extreme anger can also cause all sorts of physiological reactions as part of the fight component of the fight or flight reaction. So a person's constantly feeling this sense of physical tension as well. Anger can become problematic when it interferes in relationships. Obviously, having difficult to control anger can lead to problems in family relationships, problems between spouses or between parents and children. It can also lead to difficulties at work and in interpersonal problems with coworkers. So this can interfere or cause problems for people with things like being promoted, or even getting fired because of their problematic anger or anger outbursts at work. So that's a little bit of background about what anger is and how it becomes problematic. But what are some of the sorts of things that cause anger? Now you can think of the causes of anger as falling into sort of two broad categories. The first is anger-provoking situations, and the second is due to internal causes within the individual getting angry. So let's start with the anger-provoking situations. What are common situations that tend to provoke anger? Well, one of the most common is a perception or sense of unfairness, or that you're being treated in an unfair manner. So for example, if a coworker blames you for messing up on a project when it was actually their fault, that sense of unfairness and injustice can naturally trigger feeling angry. Abuse or violence directed towards you can also be a significant source of anger. This can take the form of strangers verbally harassing you. Sometimes you see this at sporting events where opposing teams' fans will start with verbally jostling with each other, and then this sometimes escalates into anger and violence and fights in the stands and that sort of thing. This can often be alcohol fueled, and the thing with alcohol is it tends to take down some of our defenses and our ability to regulate anger. Other anger-provoking situations can include times when you're feeling frustrated, situations when you're trying to accomplish something important or meaningful, and someone or something gets in the way of you accomplishing that goal. So, for example, I'm really close to getting this project done for work, but I just need that one piece of information from my coworker, and the coworker just is not getting me the information I need. This can also take the form of day-to-day irritations and hassles. So for example, have you ever noticed how easy it is to get irritated or angry when you're trying to get something done and people keep interrupting you, right? So if you're working on your taxes and you're trying to focus on it and your kids keep coming into the room and asking you for something or asking for a snack, and it's just like, oh, okay, enough already. So those are all examples of anger-provoking situations. So let's turn our attention more now to internal causes of anger. And the idea behind this is that different people tend to experience and think about situations differently. And this different way of viewing situations can explain why some people experience anger more frequently or more intensely than others. Now, one of the key factors that can explain why some people are angrier than others relates to how they evaluate or think about certain situations. So for example, if I'm meeting a friend for a lunch date and they're late, if I perceive that they're late because they don't value my time, or they don't think that they should respect me enough to show up on time, I'm likely to feel a lot more angry and upset in that situation than if I were to think about it as, maybe they're just late because they got stuck in traffic. Our self-talk can also contribute to dialing up or tuning up the intensity of the anger. So angry self-talk, things like, he's ruining my life, or I hate them, I'm going to make them pay for this. These types of thoughts can often just lead to a person feeling more riled up and angrier the more they think this way. Our expectations can play an important role in how we experience anger. We often have beliefs about how things should be or how they ought to be. And when things don't go the way we want them to, this can often lead to anger and frustration. Now, this is particularly important if a person's expectations are unrealistic. Because if a person's expectations are unrealistic, they're going to often find themselves being let down and disappointed, contributing to more frequent feelings of anger. Another common cause of anger can be the presence of underlying psychological conditions. Anger's a common symptom when a person is experiencing things like depression or anxiety, PTSD, or excessive worry. In fact, anger and irritability can be some of the core features of these conditions. So, in these situations, anger itself isn't a standalone issue, but part of a greater set of psychological difficulties. And finally, internal states, such as being stressed, can often lead to feeling angry. And now you've probably noticed that it's much more difficult to cope and manage anger when you're having stressful times at work or when you're having difficulties in your relationships. It's almost like we have a certain amount of energy reserve that we have available to cope with anger. And what happens with stress is that it tends to drain some of these reserves and just leave us more vulnerable to anger. Related to this, another important internal state that can often trigger anger is feeling hungry. Now, this is a phenomenon that's sometimes referred to as being hangry. So even that temporary stress of feeling hungry can be enough to make someone more vulnerable to being more irritable or angry. So I hope that gives you a better sense of what anger is, some of the purposes of anger, some of the useful purposes of anger, and some of the situations, both external and internal, that can contribute to problematic anger. Now, I'll be doing a future video in which I'll be talking about some of the ways to better identify and manage anger. So if you're wanting to learn more about this, I hope you'll keep an eye out for that video. So that's all for today's video. I'd love to hear your questions or thoughts about this, so please leave me some comments in the comments section down below. If you've been enjoying my videos and would like to see more, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll be alerted every week when I post a new video. So that's all for today. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.